Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is the Anime Man. It's 2 in the morning right now, and I just couldn't sleep because I've just been thinking about this thing. That's, as you can see in the title, it's something that happened 6 years ago today. And I'm honestly surprised that I've never made a video about it, considering how much of a, I don't want to say sensitive, but kind of a very personal thing to me. The day I'm recording this video is the 11th of March, so depending on when this video comes out, which is hopefully on the same day, then it might be on time. If not, it'll be a day late. But 6 years ago today was when probably one of the worst modern natural catastrophes, I can only call it, hit Japan, and that is the Tohoku earthquake. March the 11th, 2011. That was 6 years ago. For those of you who don't know, the Tohoku earthquake is a giant earthquake that hit the east coast of Japan, the northern part of the east coast of Japan known as Tohoku, which caused not only huge damages because of an earthquake, but more famously caused other things like, you know, the Fukushima nuclear power plant to just completely melt down, and worst of all, the giant tsunami that hit several parts of the east coast of Japan. It's a terrible thing, and I'm sure if you follow other Japanese vloggers, then I'm sure they've made videos about it either today or whenever, or sometime in the past. But I've never really talked about it, and it's kind of weird that I haven't really talked about it because, again, as I said, it's a little bit of a personal thing to me. It's a bit of a personal thing because a lot of my family, if not the large majority of my family, comes from the Miyagi Prefecture, which is the prefecture that was the worst affected, not only by the earthquake, but also by the tsunami. And I thought I'd just share that experience with you guys as someone who luckily wasn't in Japan at the time that the earthquake happened, but it's still quite a bit of a little personal thing to me, and I, maybe talk about like the whole journey and experiences through all of that. I actually remember very clearly the day that it happened. I was at school, and I don't remember the exact time. I'm sure you can look up articles about that. But I remember I was at school when I saw the news. They actually played that very famous live video of the tsunami rushing in, and I thought it was a movie. It's just something that you wouldn't think you would see in real life. It was just out of this world. And I was, what, 17 at the time that it happened, maybe 16 at the time that it happened, so it just absolutely blew my mind. And I remember when they announced where it had happened, the Miyagi Prefecture, or, more specifically on the coast near big cities like Sendai, which is like one of the, biggest main cities in the Miyagi Prefecture. I remember my heart just froze. Mainly because my grandma lives in Sendai to this day. My granddad was still alive at the time too. They were both in Sendai when it happened. And not only that, but a lot of my relatives, my grandmother's brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, or my great aunts and great uncles, they all lived around that area. So to think that a massive earthquake, unlike any other size I've ever heard of, had just struck just off the coast, I believe, if I remember correctly, of that area, not to mention a giant fucking tsunami was coming their way, possibly. It made me freeze. From my grandma's place, because she lives on the 13th floor of a giant apartment block. You can see the ocean from her place. I don't remember if she said that, she could see the tsunami coming or anything, but you can see the coastline from her house. So I can only imagine what she saw when that tsunami came in. Luckily, both my grandmother and grandfather were safe. It was kind of miraculous too, because I heard that my grandmother was just about to leave the house to go somewhere. My grandfather was out of the house, but he was in a nice, safe area when it happened. Of course, they were both still affected by the earthquake, but my grandmother was just about to leave the house when the earthquake struck. And I've been in a lot of earthquakes before, you know, I've experienced a lot of pretty big earthquakes in Japan. I think the biggest I've experienced is like maybe a magnitude 5, and that was that was the next time I'd visited after the earthquake. I was out with my sister and we were in a DVD store, and a magnitude I think 5 to like 6, it was quite large, hit the store, and I remember just all the DVDs and books just, you know, flying off the shelves. So I can only imagine what a magnitude 7 or 8 was, or whatever the size of the Tohoku earthquake was. And forgive me if I am saying any misinformation. I just want to kind of just talk about how I remembered it rather than relaying the facts, because, you know, you guys can easily do a Google search to get the facts correctly. She got a hold of us and she said, we're both fine. The whole family's fine, the house is fine, everything is fine. Unfortunately, a lot of the rest of the town was not. Especially this little coastal town that was just completely wiped out by the giant tsunami that came. And I felt so helpless when I heard that news, because I was still in Australia and I was still in high school. I just sat at home, you know, watching all of these news, and, you know, all of my friends sending me messages like, oh, like, you know, I know your family lives up there, like, how was it? Like, are they okay? Are they safe? And I have to reply saying like, yeah, they're all fine, thank you for the concerns and everything, and it's fine. You know, of course, as soon as they opened up, you know, donations and whatnot to help, you know, restore the lives and towns that had been destroyed by the earthquake and or the tsunami, I of course donated as much as I could at the time. But again, it just felt like, you know, a scene out of a movie, especially that really famous scene of, you know, the tsunami rushing by. It blew the world's minds apart. So luckily the mansion that my grandmother and grandfather were staying in at the time, and my grandmother still lives in currently right now, was like one of those fairly newer apartments that is built, you know, specifically to combat the huge shakes of an earthquake, right? So it stood strongly. However, inland of the Miyagi Prefecture, there is another house that my mother used to live in. When she was little. It's a very little quaint little house. I've introduced it in a video a few times. I'll leave a link to one of those vlogs in the description. Luckily that house was also safe because it was inland, so it didn't get affected by the tsunami at all. It did, however, get affected by, obviously, the earthquake. I think the entire northern half of Japan was completely affected by this giant earthquake. So it was so bizarre to see this house that I've become so familiar with, because this was a house that I used to visit up until my grandmother moved to this newer apartment, because you know, it's inland and it's, you know, a little bit away from the big city and, you know, quote unquote normal civilization. She had to move out. But up until I think the age of maybe, I want to say 12, 11, I visited that house every year because that's where my grandmother lived. And so it was just so shocking to see the pictures when my grandmother finally, you know, had enough time and, you know, energy to go and visit that house, to see, you know, the front stone fence that separates the house from the street had just been completely just cut in half. That's what this earthquake did, from kilometers and kilometers away off the coast of Japan. And of course the inside was trashed and just the streets were just an absolute mess. I actually got the chance to visit the town, the coastal town that was affected by the tsunami. And I got to see firsthand the damages that this tsunami had done. What was so bizarre was driving from the little bit inland, a little bit off the coast of Sendai. It's just a little bit more of a normal civilization because it had been a few years since it happened, and because the entire world did its best to, you know, donate its share of money to help rebuild Japan again. It was doing a pretty good job. The town started to look a lot better. But what was so bizarre was there was this one moment where we're driving out towards this little town that had been affected, and it's like civilization had just stopped. There was this wall of life, of civilization, and then immediately, once we crossed that boundary, there was just nothing. It was like someone from the jungle had just stepped foot into the desert. It was so sudden that it kind of took me aback. And I walked around this coastal town, or what was a coastal town, for a few minutes, and all I could see was just waste. On the ground, like out of the ground, still sticking out were I guess the pillars, the main pillars that a house or a building used to once stand on. Now they're just sticking out of the ground and just, you know, pretty much indicating to me that there used to be a building or a house right there. And also seeing things like, you know, fishing boats and other, you know, raft boats and like those kinds of pretty medium to large size boats, you know, just sitting on the dirt, you know, kilometers from any kind of ocean. And honestly, the first time I had visited, I thought about vlogging the place, but it just didn't seem right for me to just come in here and vlog something like that. There was a weird part of me that didn't want to show you guys just something so devastating like that. It was one of the few times where I'd actually walked around and I actually kind of got teary-eyed just from seeing what I was seeing. Like, my mind was so shocked that I actually got teary-eyed. And one of the things that kind of broke me, I still remember, is in the dirt that had been just still, you know, mushed around by the earthquake and the tsunami, was this little doll of a rabbit just kind of sitting in the dirt. No one had picked it up, and it was still just sitting there. You know, just, it used to once have an owner. Maybe it was a little girl, maybe it was a little boy. Just sitting in the dirt. That broke me, honestly. I saw that and I wanted to leave that place just immediately. I said to my grandma, I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be here. I just don't feel comfortable seeing what I'm seeing right now. I think it's the first time in my life I genuinely felt distressed about what I was seeing. And I'm only bringing that story up now because recently I went up north to visit my grandma. This was about a week ago. Not even a week ago, like 3 or 4 days ago, as of the recording of this video. I went up with my mum and my family for family matters, which I actually shared on Twitter, but, you know, I don't want to bring it up again, so if you've come from Twitter, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But we actually went there again, so it had been another 3 or 4 years, right, since I had visited this little town again. And luckily, things had started to pick up a little bit more. There were new buildings built in the process, and, you know, all the boats were back on the shoreline, and the coastline had, you know, slowly, there were a lot of places still under construction. To this day, 6 years, it's been 6 years since this tsunami happened, and I'd say maybe only 5% of where this town used to sit has been restored to where it has. Only, I'd say maybe 5%. Very little of this town has been restored. A lot of construction is still going on in that town to just try and rebuild it to what it once was. And so it was much less of a distressing view from what I saw. Like, I saw it and I'm like, wow, you know, things are happening, things are changing. Like, this town is getting rebuilt and it's already, like, kind of springing to life already. But there was one thing I saw in that town, and I actually spotted it as we drove out of the town, that I didn't notice the first time. But I talked about that boundary the first time between civilization and just desert. We stopped by at this little mini stop, or this, you know, convenience store. I was waiting outside and I saw at the base of this telephone pole a little blue sign that was pointing straight down. And the sign read something along the lines of, "This is the point where the tsunami finally stopped." And when I saw that, I thought back to this road that we had just traveled, because we drove all the way to the coast of this town and we were driving back home, right? And I looked at that sign, I'm like, this is a really, really long way away that we are right now from the coast. So that just put in a whole new perspective of how much this tsunami actually traveled. And when I say the tsunami stopped, I mean like, this is the point where like the most amount of damage stopped. The water still kept running a little bit further, but it was, you know, after that it had grown a little bit less in power, so it wasn't as destructive. I don't exactly remember how many kilometers away it was from the coastline, but I'm sure if you guys have ever seen that really famous footage of that tsunami running, then you'll know how fucking powerful that thing was. I mean, it tore houses and buildings down. I find it a miracle that none of my family members were hurt, and none of my family members were injured from that. I mean, that's a really weird silver lining to put it, considering so many people that I know, you know, so many family members or friends that I know were kind of affected in this whole thing, and not to mention, you know, thousands and thousands of people, you know, all across Japan that were affected by this. It's a weird kind of realization after going back there, you know, 6 years after it happened, to see that only just now, this town that was completely destroyed by this catastrophe of Mother Nature is just finally, slowly starting to be rebuilt. I think the reason why I originally didn't make a video about it is because kind of the same reason why I didn't vlog the first time I visited that coastal town. That's because it's not something that I really want to talk about. But I decided to finally make a video about this because, you know, I think, one, it's a very personal thing for me, and two, I think after seeing, again, that town slowly starting to be rebuilt, slowly starting to grow a little bit of life back into it again, I thought it'd be kind of the right time to finally tell you guys about, you know, what I saw and my whole experiences with this whole thing. And it's fucking terrible. But the thing is, we can't blame anybody for it. That's just how Mother Nature fucking works, and it sucks. It really fucking sucks. So yeah, I wish Japan all the best. If there are any other like donation pools and whatnot that are still open, I mean, I definitely will look around, and I'll try and link some in the description. All I ask for you guys is to just keep Japan in your prayers, because every day, you know, we're still affected by tons of earthquakes. You know, the whole Fukushima nuclear power plant thing still hasn't been completely resolved, and unfortunately we never know when the next one will hit, and that sucks, because I fucking love this country, and I don't want to see it get torn to shred by something we can't control. Keep liking Japan, keep having Japan in your mind, and that's all I ask. If you can do that for me, then that would mean me and my family living here the absolute world. But yeah, just thank you for listening to my story. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. As always, like and favorite if you enjoy, subscribe for more anime banner, and I'll see you guys next video of whatever I make. Keep watching anime. Ja ne!